Paul here from My Perfect Failure, helping you turn your failures into successes and your setbacks into opportunities. You can run marathons, eat well, and still be on the verge of a heart attack. Scary thought, right? Meet Dr Ford Brewer, a renowned doctor previously of Johns Hopkins University and a leading voice in cardiovascular prevention. But what happens when the guy teaching prevention becomes the patient? In this episode, we unpack the dangerous gap between how healthy we look and how healthy we really are. Dr. Brewer breaks down why so many of us are walking around with undiagnosed inflammation, metabolic issues, and early-stage heart disease, and what we can do to catch it before it's too late. This episode was a game changer for me. It made me rethink everything I believed about fitness and longevity. If you want to know more about what your doctor might not be telling you, stick around and press play wherever you get your podcast.
Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode even of My Perfect Failure. Today I'm super excited because I have another amazing guest for you. So my guest today is a board certified specialist in preventative and occupational medicine, widely recognized for his work in heart attack and stroke prevention. After starting his career in emergency medicine, he saw firsthand how many serious health issues could be avoided. This inspired him to train at Johns Hopkins Hospital in preventative medicine, setting the course for a career focused on keeping people healthy before problems arise. He has held roles at Johns Hopkins, Toyota USA, and is the founder of PrevMed, where he helps individuals achieve optimal health through evidence-based prevention. So a very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Dr. Ford Brewer. How are you?
I'm very good, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
No, I'm delighted. I'm delighted to have you. And your team kindly sent me some material around you, which was really, really helpful. And it was really interesting as well. So I'm really interested to have this conversation today, and people are going to capture exactly why I'm interested in this conversation as we get into it. Firstly, what I was keen to discover, a little bit about your background and how you actually got into medicine or into this field in the first place.
Well, so I appreciate the interest, and I think one of the things that we should consider is the impact of my story for a lot of other folks. In fact, maybe anybody that's listening. I grew up in the Southeast United States, so I was a good little Southern Baptist boy. I used to sit in the back pew and not behave exactly the way the preacher wanted me to, but I did still have some focus, and the focus was on helping people. I went through high school. I was the drum major, and I had my girlfriend, and we were all excited and going to get married, and most of that fell apart. And in your in your teenage years, you can swing back and forth between being more hedonistic and then also being more focused on helping. So I made that swing. One day in high school, they had a job fair. And the local medical school, or the medical school for that state, came by, and they had a program. They felt like there weren't enough doctors, so they had what they called an accelerated medical program. I had never thought about that as a career, but I thought, man, this would be a great way. I could probably do a lot of good things for folks. I got into that program, spent 2 years in college, and then went into medical school. So I got into medical school very easily, and got training very quickly. So I didn't really appreciate the blessings that I had there. One of the things that surprised me once I got into medical school was that it was really mostly just recipes, and it was mostly dealing with sick people. I should have figured that out beforehand.
There's no one healthy, someone well. Where's all the well people?
There was no focus on staying well. And it was, I guess it was because, if you're well, you don't need a doctor. And so we were all focused on training to deal with disease. And to me, it was like, that's really kind of dumb, because if people do the right things, one of the most important ones was staying thin, uh, keeping a low body fat and good muscles. That's one of the most important things for heart disease, which we knew was the major killer, and stroke, which was number 3. So, and so many other things too, even senility, cancer, kidney disease, blindness, for men, erectile dysfunction. So, all of this had vascular health had a huge, huge impact on not only how long we lived, but how much we were able to do, how much we enjoyed our life when we were alive. So to me, it was very, very simple. All this stuff about medications and procedures and all of that stuff really didn't matter so much as just getting people to manage their lifestyle. So I went through an internship at Charity Hospital in New Orleans, and during the big flood there in Charity, there in New Orleans, that hospital got damaged to where it's not going to be used anymore. But it was a sort of a third world experience, the closest that you'll get to a third world medicine experience in the United States. It was, in most places, there's sort of a sarcastic saying about medical education in terms of procedures, where you see one, do one, then teach one. At Charity, you didn't have time to see one. The problem came in. Somebody needed needed to have his lung drained from a lot of fluid. So you just read about it, did it, and then you taught how to do it. So that was very, very good training. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do for a residency, for a specialty, because, like I said, all the specialties seem to be geared on learning a whole bunch of stuff that if the patient just did the right things, they wouldn't have to deal with. And so the easiest way to get into medicine and just take a park for a while I figured out my life was to just go into emergency medicine for a while. It was not called the emergency department at that time. It was called ER. Went into the ER, and I got hit so many times with just about everything coming into every person coming into the ED, the emergency department, had something that coulda, woulda, shoulda been prevented. And again, I go back to the biggest killer, the biggest disabler, the biggest challenge on people's lives was cardiovascular disease, strokes, 50-year-olds having heart attacks. And so I had an epiphany moment at that point. And I remember seeing a fellow in his early 50s in the ER with a heart attack. His life he was going to survive that heart attack. We had done the stuff that he needed, but he was going to have major heart failure. It appeared that he was going to lose a big chunk of his heart muscle. He was not that heavy. And so it makes you start thinking, what else is going on there? Anyhow, the epiphany point for me was, you know what? at that point in time, there was a specialty called preventive medicine, but it was really more of a public health thing. It was more for geeks and nerds and guys that weren't really that hard charging in medicine. And I just didn't respect that specialty very much. I felt like theoretically that's where I should be, but I just didn't respect it. And at that point, when I saw that 50-year-old with a heart attack, I said, this is not about me. It's about if it's truly about patients. It doesn't matter whether I respect that profession or not. I need to learn how to educate people, how to focus on prevention, and give up any dreams of doing procedures and the romanticized components of medicine. So I did that, and I was very fortunate. I got into the best program in the world for that, Johns Hopkins. Did well, loved it. And in fact, enjoyed it a whole lot more than I expected because we got way deep into what we call denominator medicine. We got into deep science, understanding how, in reality, the vast majority of doctors are not good scientists. They just hear something. They're just people. They just hear something. They hear something from each other. They react. They respond. They do what they get paid for. And those things we'll run into again in a few minutes in terms of my own story. So I enjoyed my work at Hopkins, did well there, ended up running the program in prevention. And I took my work very, very seriously. I didn't I didn't preach one thing in terms of medicine and live something else. I did live the way we taught, and again, the major things were being thin, protecting our cardiovascular system the best we could. So now I'm going to fast forward about 30 or 40 years. So I'm age 57. I've retired the second time, and my retirements tended to last. The first one lasted a few weeks. The second one lasted a few hours. And
Can I just interject quickly?
Sure.
I read a book. I think it was by the guy that I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, I read a book, and what made me laugh, the trigger of thought. Guy retired on the Friday, so on the Monday, Monday morning, gets up at a normal time, puts his suit on, and his wife saying, "Well, what are you doing? You've retired," and he's like, I haven't. I've got to go back to work because he just couldn't. He couldn't cope with the idea of retiring. So over the weekend, he decided that he was going to unretire himself.
Well, I've always felt that
like
way.
You.
Yeah, I've always felt that way. It's interesting. I'll refer to my culture and belief system a couple of times, and one of my beliefs is that man was not really made to be retired. It's part of the way we're built. We enjoy doing something. So I don't plan on ever retiring. I plan on just continuing to change what I do to where I feel like I'm having more of an impact and I'm having fun.
Yeah, I agree. They say life is for living. So, and I think part of that is the experience of engaging. I mean, one of the best ways that we can engage, there are all kinds of different types of work, but work is one of those, particularly where we get the opportunity, in your case, to help people.
Well, in yours as well. Again, it's like, how often do people, we may theoretically understand that failure is on the road to success, but that's one of those emotional things. And when emotions are involved, you need to be reminded over and over. So I'm sure that's driving a lot of drove a lot of your decision to go into this podcast to help others as well.
Oh, 100%, 100%, yeah. Because I think everybody has huge potential, but sometimes we lose track of that. And I think circumstances, events, the emotionally, they can be very powerful. And speaking to people like you and others who I've the great fortune to meet, is kind of giving people those little seeds again of information that they can use to reignite the concept. Actually, yeah, I am capable. I can do these things. I can overcome situations. So yeah, so it's been a fun journey thus far.
One of the major things that we've had to learn in terms of the channel and that I've had to learn personally is there's a saying, and I've just begun to hear it recently, and that is people don't need to be taught most things. They end up knowing that, they hear things and they're smart enough to remember them. People need to be reminded. And it's again an emotional thing. So the human brain, the human being wants to hear a story that reminds them of where they need to head, as opposed to just hearing, okay, here's the technical stuff. And we've got a technical channel. I don't know if you missed it. I mean, if you mentioned it, we've got just a quick pitch for it. It's a channel all about health and preventing cardiovascular disease, because that is my major goal these days. So, it's with my name, Ford Brewer. We had named it something else before, but we found that people just searched it based on my name, and it's all about again the rest of the story that I'll tell you about my own life, and some warning in there, as I mentioned, for others that might be listening.
Yeah, no, I've subscribed, and I will put a link in the show notes as well, because yeah, I think what you're doing is so relevant. So yeah, we're going to get into that in a second, but I think it's not just relevant, really important, because I think for me, not being somebody that's got any, I guess, medical education, I almost feel listening to your content and reading your content, I almost felt a little bit blind to sort of how the body works, and a lot of the things I should be doing in terms of exercise, in terms of nutrition, that were things that I wasn't cognizant of. So I think it's important that we all become clearer about how our bodies work and how we can prevent certainly cardiovascular problems.
So ready to get back into
yes,
how
definitely.
I ran smack into a brick wall?
Definitely.
So, my generation, it was in my generation that they first started talking about jogging. Oh, jogging really helps, and it's what, 60s, 70s, 80s, people got more and more into it. And I did that. I thought that was obvious. We all accepted that. If you get a long, we called it LSD, long, slow distance, because I did a lot of work in terms of distance running. I ran several marathons, would run usually a half marathon each weekend just to stay in shape. So I was very disciplined. Didn't do that much resistance training. Did some high intensity interval training, but more for performance on the distance running, not really with any understanding that it was having an impact. Stayed thin like we thought we should. Kept a BM. I'm 5'10", and I stayed about 150. That was 150 pounds. I don't know how many stones that would be. But stayed nice and thin and in shape. And so I thought I was fine. And when I was age 57, go back to that second retirement, I had been helping run a national program. It was, I can't remember the previous name that it had when I was helping it the first time. I worked for this company twice. But the name is now called Premise, Premise, and it meant, and it was on-site healthcare. It was preventive programs for large employers, mostly in the U.S., but in some other countries as well. So we had like about 700 clinics throughout the U.S. And again, it was all about helping employees of large employers like Toyota, Goldman Sachs, Bethlehem Steel, several different companies help their patients stay healthy. So again, it was all about focusing more on teaching health behavior, but also providing primary care as part of that component. So I'd done that. I was retiring from that, and some friends of mine had said, there's this guy that's traveling around, and he's teaching a different way of looking at heart attack and stroke prevention. And we'd love for you to see him. We know your background. We know they knew that I had taught at Hopkins, and they said, he seems very academic and he seems very good, but he seems very, very different from what you hear elsewhere. His name was Brad Bale. He worked with a lady named Amy Doneen, and they had some interesting perspectives. One of the things they talked about was inflammation as opposed to just LDL. You know, your typical doctor in the US as well as the UK and most other places really just focuses in terms of arterial and cardiovascular health. You go in and they tend to say, okay, well, let's just get a cholesterol value. You've probably heard of that. I mean, you're not a doc, but most of us have been close enough and it's prevalent enough that the easy button is get a cholesterol and check it. And if it's okay, then it's good. If it's not okay, then put them on a cholesterol med and assume that they're not going to really change their lifestyle. Now, sometimes that assumption is safe because most docs get started in medicine thinking they're going to change the world, and then they run smack up against the reality that most people are not going to listen. So then they give up and they don't tell, then they get to the point where it's like, you know what? Then they get into the insurance or the organized components of medicine. And with insurance, basically, it helps in terms of helping people pay their health care, which is very expensive or can be very expensive. But it creates some problems. It's like so many things. It's theoretically a blessing, but in the execution, it's a major problem. If you're an insurance company, how do you pay a doctor when he says, okay, well, I just educated the patient? You just believe him? Well, doctors are going to abuse that and overbill. And that's what happened. And they got to where they said, look, you know what? We're going to watch some important indicators that are very objective, not subjective. And that way, if you meet the objective indicators, then you get paid. If you don't, you don't get paid. So they start looking for things like, did you write a script? So guess what docs did? So docs realized that, you know what? If I go in, if I see the patient, if I write a prescription, I get paid. If I don't, if I spend the time and educate the patient and hear what the patient has to say, understand where the patient's mistakes might be, what might help that patient motivate, some weight loss. What do they understand about health? Then, okay, I can maybe have more of an impact on the patient, but I'm not going to get paid. So if I go in, I write a script, I can do that in 6 minutes and get out and see the next patient, get paid again. 6 minutes later, go in and see the next patient, get paid again. So you know where this went.
Yeah.
And so meanwhile, I had a great opportunity. I didn't really, in very, very little of my career was I ever exposed to having to chase insurance. I was working with large organizations that understood the problems with insurance fee-for-service kind of payment. And so I was supervising and running an operation with over 700 docs, all of whom were not having to chase insurance dollars. They were getting to spend the time necessary to educate their patients. So anyhow, I went to see Brad and Amy in their program, and it was very interesting. They would routinely take 4 hours with a patient. So obviously they didn't take insurance, and the patient had to pay directly, and it was very, very expensive to see them. The other thing they looked at, though, was just how much of an issue is it all cholesterol? All LDL cholesterol, or is there something else going on? Meanwhile, one of the things that they did was they looked at plaque. Rather than just looking at cholesterol values in the blood, they also looked to see, do you have plaque? Do you have evidence of scarring or irritation, inflammation in your arteries? In other words, have you already developed some challenges? If you haven't, then you're probably healthy. If you have, something's going on. Sure enough, that very first visit, it was a CIMT. It's basically an ultrasound of the arteries in the neck, carotid arteries here, because if they have plaque, your heart's going to have plaque. The other arteries in your body's going to have plaque too. If you're going to have plaque in one place, you're going to have it many other places. So here I am, 57 years old, very successful in my career. Focused, made a career out of preventive medicine where, with most docs, I wasn't that wealthy, but I had done well, and it was just very difficult to do that in prevention. But I'd done that through working in places where I was going to have a large impact, managing 700 docs, a lot of nurse practitioners, helping move preventive medicine forward. The results come back on my CIMT and show that I had plaque. And it was like, wait a minute, I'm running a half marathon every week. That's not all I'm doing. That's just a part. I'm staying thin. I'm doing everything that I've taught doctors to do, all these doctors I'm supervising and the docs at Hopkins. And here I am at the early age of 57, already a cardiovascular disease patient.
Can I interject? And then, so at that time, did you question it? Because you were doing everything, you were running half marathons every week. Did you think there's got to be something wrong here?
I did. I was very frustrated, to say the least. Because when you talk to older guys, I'm 68 now, just had my 68th birthday, and you talk when younger generations talk to us, we can be difficult because we're always saying stuff like, well, you've never had to deal with this, blah, 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 blah. There's a big emotional thing that happens when you realize I've got chronic disease. And if you're a physician, well, I didn't know this at that time. I knew sort of emotionally, and I knew because I'd seen the pattern. When people get into their 40s and 50s, so when people, the first 10 years of people's lives, our mortality, morbidity curve, our death and illness curve continues to drop. Then from age 10 to about 40, it's flat and very low. The only thing that you get hurt from usually is injuries, often automobile injuries, often associated with alcohol use, that sort of thing. But then at age 40, things start happening. Your body starts to fall apart. Now, things like high blood pressure start kicking up. Things like what we call metabolic syndrome. It's a prediabetes kind of thing. That starts kicking up. Lung diseases. Not so much lung diseases, but most of the other chronic diseases, skin diseases, brain-related diseases, heart-related diseases, vascular, kidney, eye-related diseases. All these diseases start happening in your 40s, and the curve of how quickly it happens just starts ramping up like this. 50, 60, the older you get, the steeper that curve gets. So I wasn't completely surprised that I had something going on, and so it was like, okay, yep, it's here. I'm mortal. I'm going to die. The death process has officially started. And I really didn't expect that until at least my late 60s, 70s, something like that. And it was very, very frustrating. And for the first few weeks, it was like, dang, all this time I could have been, I come from a family where we enjoyed food too much for a large part of my early life. I had some close relatives who were my size, my height at 5'10", but were more than twice my weight, 350 pounds at some point. Being overweight was part of my culture, and that was not unusual for my family. That was just a big thing in the Southeast United States. And you look at those records now, you look at those numbers, and yes, the Southeast United States is a big area for poor health. Still,
is that because of food? Is that because of food and maybe lack of exercise, or just
food culture? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, food culture more than anything else, but exercise as well, things like that. So I had done just the opposite. I thought I was going to buck that curve, and maybe I did, but bottom line was it didn't keep me from becoming a cardiovascular patient. It didn't keep me from forming irritation. And the bottom line is, I guess one of the things that your viewers need to understand is, by definition, you don't get plaque in your arteries unless you've gone through the valley of death. You've gone through the danger zone, because what's happening there is that's scarring on your arteries, and it shows that you've got inflammation. Therefore, you've gone through a time when you were at very high risk for heart attack and stroke and didn't even know it.
That's the scary thing for me,
Yeah.
the fact that we're blind to it.
Mm-hmm. So now I go back, one more emotional component, and then we'll get back to some of the science. The emotional component soon became this. I started to reach some resolution in terms of saying, but this took me 2 months to start realizing, you know what? I need to calm down about feeling like I wasted all of that my life being too disciplined. That's where I was. It was like, dang, why did I do this? I could have sat on the couch and eaten Twinkies and watched TV. And at the end of the day, I began to realize, after a couple of months of going through my head, yeah, had I done that, I probably would have already been dead. So, yes, there are 3 things that cause some of the challenges that I have. One is age. It's the biggest thing. The second is genetics, and the third is body composition. So I was doing some work on body composition my whole life. And
what does that mean, body composition? Sorry.
So body fat is the major driver for this, especially visceral fat. And muscle is the major internal safety valve. Biologically healthy, metabolically healthy, strong muscle.
Okay.
So when, as we go deeper into it, and as I've gone through it for a couple of years, jogging is okay, for example, but it's not really the best for what we're doing. What we'll find is I, like at least 70% of other 60-year-olds, have metabolic disease. And in fact, at this point, I have full diabetes. Very, very few doctors would ever have diagnosed it, just because they're not looking. Why are they not looking? Because somebody comes in, they're overweight, they have high blood pressure, then the doctor gets that LDL, that cholesterol level, and says, oh, your cholesterol's high, take a statin and go home. You'll be fine. And so when you look at it, what I found was I had prediabetes, and it wasn't something that I blamed myself too much about. I mean, we saw this 40 years ago when I was in medical school. The people that had diabetes really rotted their arteries out quickly. We knew there was a major risk factor, but we just did not know how prevalent, how common it was. Since then, and it's been over the past decade, that studies have shown how common low levels of diabetes are. And so once you begin to realize that, you a whole lot of, it's the saying, the other shoe dropped. You begin to realize, oh, so this is what's been going on. We've had tons and tons of low-level diabetes causing problems to people's arteries. Yes, your cholesterol does tend to go up when that happens, but there's a big question, a huge debate right now in the medical field about just how much of this is LDL cholesterol and how much of this is undiagnosed diabetes or prediabetes. They looked at the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey as part of the U.S. Census program, where they go deep in terms of labs and examination. They found recently that not by the time you're age 60, by the time you're age 18 and above, over half of us already have metabolic disease. 40 years ago, when I was in school and in training it and running the program at Hopkins, we had no clue that it was so common. And so now you're seeing a time where there's massive debate. I think there was one of the first presidents of the medical school at Harvard said to his first graduating class, at least half of what we know in medicine is wrong. The problem is we don't know which half.
That's scary. That's scary.
And so this is one of those times, like Galileo and the solar system, where we're finding that everything we knew that, quote, LDL, cholesterol, causes all this problem is the major cause. That's really coming into question right now. And I personally believe as you start to look at the facts that we're seeing, we're going to find it's more undiagnosed metabolic disease, prediabetes, diabetes.
I'm conscious of time. So what I was keen to capture. So you managed to reverse your arterial plaque by 20 years. So I think that's a key point. Congratulations, but how did you do that?
So I found a few things that I was doing wrong. One of them was this low-fat diet. I went and found out that I had significant prediabetes. If you challenged, I took a glucose challenge and my blood sugar would go up to 160, 180. At this point in time, as I've continued to age, my insulin receptors have gotten more difficult, more old, and still having more and more function problems. I'll go up to 200 or more. My blood sugar will. So I found that, yeah, I'm one of those folks that had diabetes, and like 90% of us that have it had not been diagnosed. And, I look around, I'm the doc, I had nobody else to blame but me and the system in terms of what we do know and what we don't know. So once I began to realize what the real root cause is, things changed dramatically. I had been on a low-fat diet. I had no problem. I ate all the carbs I wanted. Breads were one of my major staples. I loved bread. Well, any grain products are the major source of carbs in a typical diet. Breads, especially highly processed, breads, pastas, rice, potatoes are a big deal. So any of those things, I began to realize that the way my body was performing at that point in terms of my insulin receptors, I ate too much of that and it became a poison to me because it was burning my arteries. So I cut way back on that. That was the first and biggest thing that I did. At that point, that was where we started to see a rapid and steady improvement in my inflammation and arterial plaque. Then I made some changes in some other things. We mentioned exercise before. It had always been long, slow distance before. The science has changed in that space. Yes, aerobics, walking, stuff like that is good. But we're also finding that you really have to stress the body. We've known this before, but we never made the connections. The insulin receptors that are ailing live in our capillaries, and most of our capillaries are in the large muscles of our lower body, the calves.
And what are capillaries?
Capillaries are the microscopic blood vessels, not the big arteries and certainly not the aorta, but it gets smaller and smaller. Those capillaries are the interface between the blood system and the muscle system. The biggest muscle mass is in our legs. With aging, with diabetes and prediabetes, we tend to lose that capillary interface between the blood supply and the muscles. So as we're losing function of our insulin receptors, the parts that help us metabolize glucose, then we lose our ability to metabolize glucose. Sorry about that. I went way too geeky, way too technical, maybe way too fast. But the bottom line is, you asked me what I did to change. Instead of just long, slow distance, I had to start adding a whole lot of interval work where I push really hard for a minute or less. I crank up, sprinting as hard as I can up a hill. I'm breathing like because what I'm doing there is I'm increasing the oxygen use in those leg muscles as much as I can, and then stimulating, okay, my muscles are saying, hey, we need more oxygen. We need to improve our capillaries. And so that's where our insulin receptors live. Pardon the geekiness.
No, it's good to have that. You know what's good about that? So sometimes we can be given the answer, but without knowing sort of the equation that goes into it. So you've given us the science that goes into the answer, which makes it all logical. Without that, it's good to know, but it's nice to know where it comes from.
Yeah. So I'll go one other place, and that's probably, those are the keys, those are the basics and probably what we'd have time to cover. And that is another geeky term, mitochondria. Those are the powerhouses of our cell. And we've known since the 60s and 70s that these powerhouses of our cell are really critical to the aging process and the chronic disease process. You can diet all you want. You can drop carbs all you want. That's not going to regrow your mitochondria. That's not going to regrow ailing capillaries in these muscles. Mitochondria grow by being stressed, and that's resistance training. Doing squats, doing lunges, things like that. Those capillaries can grow and be repaired, but they're only going to grow from oxygen deprivation, and that's that high intensity interval work.
And how regularly should we be doing that?
Well, it depends on how old you are, and depends on how much problem you have. I do it at least once a day.
Really?
But it's not like I get up and I go to the gym every day. Don't do that. I go to the gym like once a week. But there's a thing called REHIT. It's called reduced exertion high intensity interval work, and that's where you just get two high intensity intervals for about 20 seconds. Like you think, okay, I'm running from a bear up a hill, 20 seconds. I've got two hills.
I love that idea.
What's that?
I love that concept.
Yeah. So you go outside. I've got a couple of hills outside my house, and I just go run up those hills, 20 seconds each, two of those, and I'm good. I do about 3 of those per week. Now, in terms of resistance training, I've got stairs in my house. And so I just walk over to the stairs, and we timed it one day. It's 1 minute and 52 seconds. And I usually do that twice. I do about 50 calf raises on the stairs, and each calf individually. And I do about 20 what we call step squats, one-legged step squats, where it's basically the action of going up the stairs, but I skip 1 or 2 stairs. So
yeah, I get it.
I'm going up one stair. And once you just actually focus on that couple of minutes twice a day, that gives me the majority of stimulus. See, the reason I need to do that every day is I'm 68. As we get older, when you're younger, you're in your 40s, your testosterone's still growing, your estrogens are still going. They help you improve your muscles, and your muscles respond to just daily activities. As we get into our 60s and 70s, that's not going on anymore. It's called anabolic resistance. Our muscles don't want to grow. So you see us older people start to lose muscle, and that's why it needs to be stimulated. Then once a week, I'll go to the gym. Once a week, I'll go outside and do some heavy gym work, and I'll do some heavy full interval work where I spend about an hour doing sprints and bicycle.
Okay. We're getting to the top of the hour now, and I know you've got a call in a second. This is fascinating stuff, and I definitely would love to keep in contact with you and maybe have another conversation, because I feel that we've captured the essence, but I think there's a lot more depth to go. So for people listening, where's the best place for people to find you?
I would go to the internet, just my name, Ford Brewer, on YouTube, and we'll also give you our website. It's Dr Ford Brewer, MD.
Yeah.
And we have plenty of stuff. We're actually seeing patients. I've got docs from all over the world that are working with us, like Jesus, who's in the background. You've already met.
Yeah.
A great preventive medicine trained doctor from a place called Guanajuato in Mexico, and we have a very, very active practice and a whole lot of demand, most of it driven by that, the YouTube channel and people hearing exactly what we were talking about today. So we're actually even at a place right now, we've expanded our capacity. We're offering a free consultation if folks would like to come see us.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So I guess there'd be a link on your website where people could book if they want to.
And Jesus, is it the 859 number, 859-721-1414? Is that the number they should call?
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. Okay, lovely. So what I'll do, we'll finalize exactly what those details are, and then I will put links to those in the show notes so it's easy for people to either call or email or whatever it is they need to do so they can make to book a session. And is that primarily for people in the States or North America, or could it be people in the UK as well?
We've got people in Singapore and Israel and several of the Arab countries. We've got the UK, Brazil. We've got people all over the world.
Okay, fabulous. Because the scary thing for me is, I've kind of mentioned this before, but it's the fact that I think a lot of us, including me, and I think probably people that I know, 99.9% of people I know, will be blind to the facts in terms of, arterial plaque. Are we pre-diabetic? What does it look like? I don't think people think about it. I think people typically think that they go on certain diets. They maybe do some of the exercises that people that I know definitely won't be doing half marathons every week. So they're doing less exercise and they think because maybe on the outside they look healthy, that we're good. But clearly that isn't always the case.
Absolutely. Are you in London?
Just that I'm in a place called Basingstoke, which is probably about about an hour, 50 minutes from London.
So wasn't London the setting for Jack the Ripper?
Yes, it was.
So Jack the Ripper is one of the stories that just, it's like it scares everybody. The whole idea of a murderer lurking behind you when you're walking down the street, you're going about your daily business, and you don't know it. That's exactly what's going on now. Far more than Jack the Ripper could ever have done. There's that murderer, that disabler is lurking behind us, and it's such a waste because all you have to do is look.
Yeah.
You just need to turn around and look, test, see if you've got the problem, and then you can fix it.
So just around that, and then I'm going to let you go because I appreciate your time. In terms of younger people who are getting maybe from 15 to 18 when they go to college, is this something that we should be educating people at a younger age? So when they get into their 40s, they're already vested in the education, but also B in terms of, food, exercise, et cetera, et cetera.
Clearly, the things I've already talked about keeping your muscles in shape, minimizing body fat, maximizing muscle, and watching those carbs. Any of the grain products. Jesus loves to bang on breakfast cereal. That is probably the most dangerous food. And when you think about the statistics that I gave you, that already by the time you're age 18 and over, we have over half of us already have this problem. You can see it in our testing and looking at our bodies. What does that tell you about the 15-year-olds? It doesn't wait until they're 15.
Yeah.
This doesn't suddenly start at 18 years old. This is starting earlier than 18 years old.
And in terms of testing, so we start at you as an example. In terms of testing your levels, how frequently should we be testing? Do we need to go to a doctor to test us to make sure that our arterial plaque levels are below what they should be?
One of the most practical ways to do this is get just one of the glucose testing devices.
Okay.
The continuous glucose devices, like the Libre, which was first made available in Europe several years ago, but other devices as well.
Okay, lovely. Okay, and this is the last question. Your 3 inspirational people for dinner, and then I'm going to let you go.
Oh, my 3 people. Oh, okay. So as I mentioned, I grew up with a belief system in Christianity, so Jesus would be the first, obviously. The second might be obvious as well. A fellow named William Osler. One of my pet peeves about medicine from day one is that docs always just wanted to do more and more labs there's this quote from William Osler, who is credited with taking medicine from the Dark Ages into modernity. He had his own problems, like all of us. He had a problem with addictions, but he also had a problem with a fiery temper. He was in that grand rounds, that oak-lined grand rounds room at Hopkins, and a junior doctor was asking a patient. He got sick of it because the doctor was walking right over the diagnosis, not knowing the questions to ask, not getting the answers. He jumped up, he slammed his hand on the table, and he said, "Doctor, your patient is telling you your diagnosis. You just need to listen." And so, as you can see, that's been sort of a theme for my my approach to medicine from the beginning. Then the third one is sort of a toss-off. It's a more recent thing. Several times I've gotten interested. I'll never do this, and I don't have an interest in doing it, but I have an interest in the mentality and the physical training involved in Alex Honnold's work. He's the guy that holds the record for the free climb on El Capitan and Half Moon in Yosemite, 3,000-foot sheer cliff, free climb. And it's like, I'd love to have that guy to dinner to just figure out, what's inside his head. He when he gives his talks about his experience, one of the things he said is, those 2 climbs were obviously successful, because if they hadn't been, I wouldn't be here giving this presentation.
I love that. I'm going to look him up after. I'm not familiar with him.
Hannold.
Lovely, lovely. And
so it's been great. I appreciate the time.
It's been amazing. And just found you said about the cereal in the morning. Are you on about general cereal not good for us, or cereal bars?
You have to look at any grain product. One of the biggest lies that you hear, and sometimes it's a purposeful lie, sometimes it's not purposeful. People say whole grains. Even in the U.S., My Plate, recommendations from the federal government, they say you want to make up the majority of your calories with healthy whole grains. A couple of quick statistics. Raising your blood sugar. White bread has a score of 65. No, let me rephrase that. White bread has a score of 75. Whole wheat bread has a score of 65. Pure table sugar has a score of 50.
Really?
Yeah. So again, don't believe everything you hear. Go a little bit deeper.
Okay. A good breakfast. What's a good breakfast?
Believe it or not, eggs are good. Believe it or not, these sausages and bacon they're not bad either. You hear all this stuff about, processed meats, they're terrible. Go a little bit deeper on that too.
Okay. So I'm going to let you go. I'm going to encourage everybody to get in contact with you. Definitely subscribe to your website. I will put the links in the show notes. So if you want to be healthy, do follow what Dr. Brewer is doing, because that clearly is the way forward. Definitely enlighten yourself and definitely have a healthier life. So thank you for your time today. It's been amazing connecting with you.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of My Perfect Failure. We appreciate your time. We're keen to hear about the things you like and equally the things you don't like. So you can find me at paul@myperfectfailure.com, or you can find me via the contact page on the website. And please do hit the subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. So take care for now. Bye. Hey there, just before you go, I currently have a couple of complimentary coaching slots available. These are one-to-one transformational coaching sessions designed to help you gain clarity, break through blocks, and move forward with confidence. If this sounds like something you benefit from, just check the link in the show notes to book your session. Take care for now.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.